This episode of Linux Action Show is brought to you by GoDaddy.com.
And by Ting.com. Head over to last.ting.com and save $25 off your first device.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Linux Action Show, Season 27, Episode 8. My name is Chris.
My name is Matt.
Hey, Matt. Good morning to you.
Good morning.
All right, should I tell the good people out there what today's episode is about?
I've been looking for it all week.
All right, well, coming up on this week's episode of the Linux Action Show, we're going to give you our first hands-on impression of MIR, Ubuntu's new display server. And we'll cover some of the controversy surrounding MIR and Wayland and what some of the root of that is. And then also why the developers out there, the great wise developers, believe that X will no longer last us. It's not going to last another 30 years, Matt, and they really desperately want to move to something else.
Big conversation there.
Yeah, so we'll cover what sort of the reasons behind all of that are. Plus, we'll give you our first look at Fedora 19 in the /Etsy segment. And then in the latter half of the show, we've got some great emails from you guys. Of course, we've got the news coming up. But first, it's our picks.
All right.
All right, Matt, let me crank out the Runs Linux. This was highly voted on the Linux Action Show subreddit this week, and it was submitted 2 days ago by Daytwad. I think that's how you say his name.
Okay.
Computer engineer Barbie runs Linux.
Wow.
Yeah, take a look here. So he's got still shots here. You can see as he zooms in on the packaging. That is a Linux computer, and that is unquestionably the Tux Penguin.
That is totally the Tux Penguin.
So there you go. There's look at computer engineer Barbie. She apparently has hipster glasses. She has a hipster Bluetooth headpiece. Look
of course, right. Yeah,
she's got a Bluetooth headpiece.
Like, really?
And she's got a laptop. And on the laptop, what I love about computer engineer Barbie is displayed on her Linux-based laptop is a picture of computer engineer Barbie.
And I'm almost positive it's a System 76.
Maybe. Ooh, maybe it's a new line. Right?
Yeah, right.
My daughter would be interested.
That'd be cool.
So I just thought that was hilarious. That it's a selfie
funny.
or something on the computer. I don't know exactly.
It's kind of like branding overkill. Yeah.
Yeah, I thought I wanted to give special props to. Sorry, that's not Daytwad. That's Claytwad.
Oh, whoops.
Yeah.
Okay.
I wanted to give special thanks to Clay for not only submitting a very popular Runs Linux to the show, but animated too.
Yeah, the animated I think really helps drive it home because then you can kind of get the full effect of that. I'm going to click through a bunch of pictures.
What I love is that people are buying it now. He actually made he didn't make it with our affiliate link, so he knocks a few points off for there. But he's actually made links in the comment thread for $44.99. You can own Computer Engineer Barbie yourself.
I don't see myself buying them. I don't know. I mean, I never really understood how that works.
Great reviews though. Look at that. Great reviews across the board, Matt. So,
okay.
Maybe you might enjoy it, actually.
Get some classic G.I. Joes and get Barbie in there and kind of have a, I don't know.
For the price of 2 Barbies, you could buy yourself a Roku.
Right?
Yeah. Look at that.
That's kind of my thing.
She's got an iPhone, too, which is ridiculous.
See, that's the problem. Is she's got Linux, but she's running iOS. No. She needs an Android phone. I'm just saying.
Yeah. Well,
I'm just saying.
Yeah, well, Barbie's one step at a time. One step at a time for Computer Engineer Barbie.
This is true.
If you guys want to send in a Runs Linux, we always appreciate it. You can submit it to our Linux Action Show subreddit, or email to linuxactionshow@jupiterbroadcasting.com.
Good stuff. Good stuff.
Okay, Matt. Well, we have a monster show to get into today. Too much show. We're oversized. We're actually probably going to get a ticket from the Internet Police.
Oh, definitely. It's like oozing out the sides. Man.
Until that fee comes in, or maybe to help us pay for that fee, we should stop and thank this week's sponsor, and that is GoDaddy.com. GoDaddy.com. Longtime sponsors of the Linux Action Show, right? And as many of you know, I sort of have leverage over at GoDaddy thanks to a special arrangement where my wife sometimes physically threatens members of GoDaddy, or they just hook us up. It depends on the version of the story at the time. And I got something new for you guys this week. I teased it a little bit last week. GoDaddy has a very special offer that's only going to be around for probably the month. Use the code when you're checking out over at GoDaddy. Use the code FREE3. One word, FREE3, and you will get free private registration on a .com for a year.
Interesting.
Yeah, that's
I
great.
like that.
If you're doing a personal site, if you're a business, you might, I don't know if it's going to apply to you. Probably, maybe. If you're doing a personal site, you're doing a blog, something for the summer, whatever it is, get the free private registration. Use the code FREE3, right?
Well, see, and I try and keep all my stuff at private registration just for, I like it that way. And it's cool because it's like, for free.
Some people like Danica Patrick, supposedly, this is just a theory. Some people believe that maybe they wanted to be the secret sponsor behind hundreds of open source projects, but you'd never know because they did free private registration.
That would be cool.
Yeah. So Danica uses FREE3 when she checks out.
Right.
FREE3.
I see a connection.
FREE3, yeah. But, maybe if she already had private registration or she didn't want it for a project, but she more importantly wanted to get a .com for $2.49, Linux 249.
Awesome.
She checks out with Linux 249, guess what? Just getting that .com for $2.49.
Nice.
So you got a couple different options there, you guys. And I want to say thank you to everybody who supports our sponsor, to let them know that you guys appreciate them keeping us on the air. And thank you to GoDaddy for the extraordinarily long-time sponsorship of the Linux Action Show.
And the great choices for promo codes. That's awesome.
Yeah, we're getting the good stuff, man.
Yeah.
We're getting the good stuff. All right, this week, I got a couple of picks. We'll start with our Android pick, as is per tradition. Nice. Goodbye, Danica. Goodbye, Danica. You, Matt, said, Chris, you got to check out Mr. Number.
I swear by this app.
This is like the Android app that has freed you from telemarketers, right?
Yes.
So is this essentially like it allows you to manage a call block list and an SMS block list?
It does that, but first of all, what it starts out with is it has a list of known annoying callers, so that it's automatically blocking them out of the box, which is awesome. In addition to that, if you're getting calls from people that maybe it's just like maybe you have a crazy I don't know, the overly attached girlfriend type thing, right?
Who, me?
Yeah, Danica's like just ringing your phone off the hook, and you're like, I'll send you the voicemail. It's cool, but I don't necessarily need my phone ringing every time. You have that option.
Okay.
Or maybe you're just like, you know what? I want it to pick up and hang up immediately. You have that option as well, and it gives you full control. Plus, it provides you a log of all the activity going on, but it never bothers you. And I really, really like it because it works really well.
So if they're on this blacklist, then does your phone just not even disturb you at all?
It will. It depends on how you have it set up. I believe if you have it set to go to voicemail, it won't do anything. You won't notice anything at all.
Okay.
If you have it set to answer and hang up, of course, it will quickly, within probably a fourth of a second, just boop, boop, real fast. You'll see a little thing pop up and it'll go away, but that's pretty much it. And you only notice if you're doing something on your phone.
That seems pretty nice.
I'm really happy with it because it doesn't actually interrupt my app.
PC Mag gave it 100, put it in the 100 best Android apps of 2012. New York Times said Mr. Number is one of the most popular. It looks like it's got, it's got a lot of
I've not gotten any annoying ads or any pop-ups or any crap. And I run a virus scanner on my phone. It all came up clean. So I'm, the ad stuff's pretty reasonable. So I'm okay with it.
Very nice. Okay, I see. Oh, I see. Yeah, this is great. So this is something that I have used Google Voice for, but it's a little more manual. And the other thing about Google Voice is I'm not really that happy these days with the call quality. There's seems to be more delay than there used to be. Sometimes there's echo.
There's a bit of a delay.
Yeah, and when I'm using when I'm using my actual phone number, the call quality's better. The conversation's a little more clear. But the problem is then I lose the ability to block certain calls. But it sounds like this kind of gives that back to me.
It does. And not only that, but the two spam lists out of the box compared to Google Voice is night and day. These guys are way better.
Oh, yeah.
Because Google Voice's spam list is out of the box is pretty soft.
They seem to be putting minimal effort into it.
They really are. Yeah. So, I'm really happy with these guys. I can't recommend them enough. And it doesn't cost a dime.
It's free.
Yeah, it's free.
We'll have a link to Mr. Number in the show notes, as well as a link to all the past Android picks. This week, I wanted to share an app that I've just been having fun with. It's actually very powerful, too, and it's great for funny memes. Now, one of the things that I have started using a ton on G+, surprisingly, since I'm not huge like auto update, auto publish stuff, but I've been using the auto backup feature in Google+. And every time I snap a picture on my phone, it uploads to Google+. And if I take a bunch of frames next to each other that are very similar, it'll make an animated GIF.
You got some pretty cool ones.
And I'm like, okay, you know what? Turns out I love animated GIFs now. And but I don't always want to have to use Google+ to get them. So guess what, Matt?
You got an app for that.
I got an app for that. It's called QGIFer. Or QGIFer, depending on your persuasion. And as you might have guessed, Qt-based application.
Kind of thought so.
And it lets you make an animated GIF file from a video file.
Oh, score.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Depending on the length of the video, you're going to get different performance results from the application. So I found shorter videos work really well. I'll give you a little demo. What do you say?
I like that.
So here I have QGIFer loaded, and it's available in repos and things like that. And you tell it you want to make a video. So here is a video I made over the weekend of some troubles I was having with the MIR display server. We're going to be talking about that later today, right?
I like that. I like that blend.
And maybe I want to post this up on Reddit or I want to post this on Twitter, and I don't want to post a 3-minute video.
Of course not.
Because it's really just kind of, so you can see I can kind of scroll through. You can see nothing really happens at the beginning of the video.
Right.
And then towards the end of the video, there's a lot of action on the screen where things really start to happen.
So you want to get from point to point versus a lot of dead air time.
Yeah, exactly. So you can see here on the bottom, there's this little track, and if I move this is the range that it's going to make a GIF file out of. So I'll go over here and I'll tighten it up, right? And I'll say make it from this range right here, and you can kind of see how it previews.
Oh, I like the preview window.
Yeah, yep. And then it lets you do other things. You can apply crops, you can apply some effects, but one of the things, of course, for your meme purposes, is you can insert text.
Perfect.
So like you can select the range. So you can see I want text from my current frame, which is 29, to let's say let's see now. If I go forward a little bit, then I can go back over here and say to this frame. So from 29 to 49, insert the text, right? And then I'll just say MIR Problems. Boom, right?
Nice.
So very memey. And I've inserted, so you can see now I have MIR Problems right there. I can move it around. I can resize it so I can make it real big. Like that.
And it's draggable for the audio listeners.
Yeah.
You can actually drag that text size. I like that. That's very tidy.
And then once you're done, you just have a little extract GIF or GIF option. And depending on, so if your video is a motion JPEG video, you'll find that QGIF can handle very large files. You'll find that it moves very fast. The performance is very good. If it's an H.264 file, like from your phone, like mine is right here, it has to work a little more.
But that's okay. If it's not dropping frames, I consider that to be worth it.
Oh, and that's actually a good point to mention is you can go into the properties of your project and you can say, I want the GIF to be 24 frames per second. I want it to be 8 frames. And, the more frames, the more fluid the GIF is, but then the larger the file. So,
and for memes, really, you kind of want it to be a little choppy. You kind of do, right?
It kind of adds the jump cut funniness to it, yeah. So you can see I'm at 85% rendering on QGIFer, and it's not particularly multi-threaded. You can it's barely even touching the CPU.
That's okay.
And then it brings up a very manic. See, I probably set the frame rate too high, but if I hit save, it'll generate out a GIF here, and I can save it out, and then see we can probably go load that up in Firefox or something.
That's cool.
Yeah. I'll say no, I don't want to shave. And then if we go into my pictures folder, I think is where it saved it.
Pictures, and like you pointed out, what's cool is that by actually adjusting your frame rate, you can kind of slow that down or speed it up or really whatever you're looking to do.
If I open up in the image viewer, I don't think by default it'll be animated. But if you open it up in your browser of choice, we'll take the Fox here, and we'll drag this into the Fox. And you kind of get a feel for. There you go. So I did the frame rate too high.
Yeah.
But that's a GIF, and it very much demonstrates the problem I have.
It does,
right?
Yeah. It's that's what MIR's going for.
And so because I did the frame rate too high, it's a 15 megabyte file. So you got to play with that.
But kind of adjust to meet your needs.
You could also down-res it because look how you can see it's a 1900 by 1068, so it doesn't need to be that large. So I could make it smaller. I could lower the frame rates. I could throw it through some more compression. But that was just to kind of give you an example of what it's capable.
That's cool. And how long that took? It didn't take any time at all. It took longer to render than it did to create it.
Oh, yeah. I mean,
it's wow.
Yeah, yeah. Because once you snap through it a few times, and in fact, see, if I made another one just in case I had to ready bake this thing. Kind of like old Paula Deen style.
Well, minus a few things, but yeah.
There, okay, so you see on this one, the MIR Problems, I moved the text just to demonstrate that you can have the text do different things at different frames. I didn't do a very good job.
Cool. So you could literally do one set of text and then do that flash of another kind of text.
Statement, reaction text, or something like that. Yeah. So
I like it.
That's QGIFer, and that's one way for you to be extremely obnoxious online via a Linux desktop application.
I like that. You're using Linux, you're trolling folks. Yeah. It's got everything I love.
It's basically a match made in heaven, I think. We have links to all the previous desktop picks in the show notes.
Scored.
And go make yourself a funny meme. Here, do something with this. All right, do something with that. And then we want to see that in the subreddit. All right, Matt, let's do the news.
Hey, it's the news, and this episode's brought to you by
Ting.com. Matt, Ting is mobile that makes sense. Been my mobile provider since the start of the year. Absolutely love Ting. Contract free, no early termination fees, completely and totally. Planning not required, no BS.
No kidding.
And what I mean by no planning required is I've noticed that, I think because for mainly coverage on the show, but also because I just love to play with toys, I have multiple Android devices.
You do. You literally surround them like in a circle. It's kind of weird.
And it is just, with the traditional way that telcos work, it is not scalable to have multiple devices that have data plans. You can't.
It's not practical. It's not scalable. It's just not happening.
You'd have to have massive data plans for every single one. Well, that's where Ting does things very differently. You just simply pay for what you use, and if you bring a new device on, it's only $6. So if you have a device that's sitting on your desk for half the month, you're not going to pay some $60 plan for that. You're just going to pay $6 flat. And if you use it, you pay for it. And that's what I mean. There's no planning required.
So you can share regardless. I
don't have to worry about it. Yeah,
it's just done.
And the great thing about Ting is You may have heard in the headlines. In fact, Slashdot just had an article about it this weekend. Some of the major cell phone providers are actually beginning to plan to sell your location data, your web browsing history, and a lot of your habits on the phone to advertisers.
That's yucky.
In a situation like that, where they have you over a barrel because you're in these contracts where they'll fine you multiple hundreds of dollars if you cancel, Ting is solving that problem. If they ever upset you, which they wouldn't, but if they ever did, you're simply contract free. You can walk. And Ting is very easy to get into. Not only can you do the whole thing through their website if you want, but go over to their devices tab and check out. When you go to last.ting.com, you'll save $25 off any of these devices. And you're scrolling through these. Look, Matt.
I love the fact that they give you options. It's like they're not expecting you to like fabricate a phone out of thin air. They will provide you options to choose from, and they're good phones.
You can absolutely go the route I went and get the best phone that's ever been created, the HTC One, completely unlocked, contract free. But if that's a little out of your price range, go over and look at their used phones. You can get on a Ting. You can get on a Ting plan with no contract, with unlimited, or not unlimited, but essentially as many minutes as you're going to use, and if you only get charged for what you use.
Well, I'd say they're elastic. I mean, it feels like it's unlimited because it'll adjust to what you need. Sure.
And if you get a smartphone, you're going to get built-in tethering. You're going to get built-in hotspotting. But look at this. Here's the one I would recommend to folks if you're wanting to jump on a Ting and you're on a budget. You can get a Samsung Galaxy S3. That's a great phone for $207, contract free from Ting.
That's not bad. So this is a phone that you're not going to feel like you're lacking owning. And it's a great phone. It's a great buy.
That's a great phone. You can get it right there from Ting, $207 refurbished.
That's not bad.
They also have a Samsung Nexus S, $90 from Ting.
That's like the budget. I mean, that's cool.
And the Nexus S is one of the great Nexus phones that was made. You get this, you're going to have 4G speeds where available. You're going to have tethering and a hotspot. You can put that in your pocket and power your Nexus tablet device or whatever it is you might have.
It's going to give you all the bells and whistles you want without breaking the bank.
And this is a perfect thing for somebody where maybe you don't use a ton of minutes some months, and Ting's flexible pricing plan will work perfect for you. And if you go into a month where you have, you're busy for a couple of weeks and you've got a lot of usage, you don't have to stress about it. You don't have to worry about it.
It's elastic.
And on top of that, they have very, very powerful online management. You go in there, you log in. They've got very easy to read where your plans are at, how many minutes you've used. And the great thing is you can dial in their pricing plans to exactly what you need. You just say, okay, I'm going to need this many minutes, this many text, and this much data. It's very easy. In fact, if you go over to last.ting.com, click on the plans link, and then go check out the way you can sort of categorize. I'm a small or I'm a large guy, for the minutes and the text.
And it's so easy to navigate and to work with. And the fact that if you do miscalculate, that's okay. They'll work with you.
Oh, it's no big deal. And they'll credit you on unused service. So if you set up for a plan that is actually more than you need, no big deal. If you use less than you thought you would, Ting will drop you down to the next level and hit you with credits on the next bill. So
that's so awesome.
Peasy. And then if you go over, there's no overage penalties. So I love Ting. Go to last.ting.com. Thanks to Ting for some awesome sponsorship of the Linux Action Show. Go see what I've been raving about. The best phone, this HTC One, best phone I've ever owned. One of the best pieces of hardware I've ever had. It's built incredible. Its performance is amazing. It's absolutely stunning. And when you combine it with Ting, which empowers you as the customer instead of you being hooked to them, it's really an amazing experience. And as these devices become more of the general computing platform, we need, as consumers, to be careful that we're choosing the right providers that empower us and don't restrict us.
Exactly.
That's why I love Ting.
Well, it's a little bit like avoiding the mistakes we've learned with ISPs is a great example.
Yeah.
We're learning from this, and Ting is providing.
We know better.
Exactly.
We do know better. It's just there haven't been a lot of great options until now, and I hear from people outside the country all the time who wish they could grab Ting too.
Yeah, I've read just here the other day 3 people. I mean, just awesome. In a row.
We've been hearing from people all the time that try out Ting and love it. So you guys go check it out. Last.ting.com, and thanks to Ting for sponsoring the Linux Action Show.
Awesome stuff. Thanks, guys.
Now, as we're jumping into the news, I want to start with something that could be vaporware, could be very innovative. I don't know where to land on this. It's called Soul, and their slogan is "Powered by Life." And it's the world's first fully solar-powered laptop. It never needs to be plugged in. It's an all-terrain, off-road, sport utility, Linux-powered laptop.
Well, so they're basically, their claim to fame is we're a sexier looking tough book. I mean, it seems like what they're kind of coming out.
Yeah, I guess so, huh?
Yeah. I mean,
and the solar powered thing.
And their page is just obnoxious. But
it is pretty wild, yeah.
I mean, it's pretty to look at, but the navigation's a little messy.
Should I play this video?
Yeah, why not?
Let's see what this. Here, I'll turn it up. We'll see what we get on the video.
Yeah.
Right now, we get a lot of music. Huh. Let's skip ahead here.
It's here. It's everywhere we choose to go. Imagine harnessing that power to fuel our adventures. Imagine using it for promoting education and doing all sorts of good.
This is kind of setting off the BS dart.
Yeah, I mean, it's like a bucket of stock footage. I mean, like some of this looks really familiar from my own stock footage account. So it's like, hey, I don't know about this.
SOL. That's funny that it's called SOL, but or Soul, depending on how you Soul
which,
comes.
Also sets off a bill.
Comes loaded with all the productivity and creative tools you need. You don't need to purchase any more software to get started. There are thousands of free apps available online with Ubuntu, the world's most popular and powerful, increasingly popular, the world's most popular and most powerful and increasingly popular operating system.
The copy editor was on vacation. Okay.
Well, maybe their hardware. I don't know. They say Intel inside. It can be ordered with various CPU speeds. They're gonna have to contact them for details.
So it's got to be an Atom though, because if you're solar powering a laptop, I'm calling low usage.
Innovative motherboard design combined with Intel's superior performance makes Soul not only affordable but extremely powerful. The touchpad was designed with exceptional accuracy and smoothness in mind. We've took great care in making sure Soul's input devices, including the keyboard, and the touchpad, are built for optimal use and comfort. I mean, the keyboard does look very nice.
It does, and I'm going to provide these guys with a solution. So
environmentally friendly.
Environmentally friendly. So first step is, first of all, send one to me, and I'll review it.
So here's what happens when you go to buy one. You click on their web store, and you get 31 days, 6 hours, and 23 minutes until we get more details.
What's the company that's putting it out? What's
it's I think WEWIL Telecommunications Inc.
I'm gonna have to research this. I don't know. It piques my interest.
I guess maybe it's a telco. Maybe it's a telco.
It would be really cool if they did, but I don't know. I mean,
let's go down the route.
Okay.
Skeptical pants off. Let's say we have a solar-powered laptop that runs Linux with an Intel chip, which I think is a big deal. If it's truly an Intel chip, solar-powered, and say maybe they build in 3G or 4G if it is from a telco, and it's rough, it's tough, it's like a tough book.
That would be extraordinarily cool, especially in so many parts of the country where you got a lot of sun to work with. Not having to plug it in. I mean, that also you go into the worldwide perspective. I mean, where there are no outlets. I mean, that's really huge.
I think that's why they kind of have the Africa focus here on the.
Makes sense, right.
But
where
like for students, this would be a great thing too. I don't know.
It's kind of ugly. I'm not in love with the when it's closed. I'm not in love with that top piece. I think it could be a little. I'm
sure that's impact resistant, right? That's got to be like their impact.
And I know they're trying to make the sheer size of it not look hideous, and I understand that. But
like that's probably designed so you can step on it or something.
And it does kind of
I just wonder. I mean, okay, so I'd like to see something like this exist. The part that I'm not buying is the solar part. I can buy that you could OEM a Toughbook, rebrand it, and package it up and make it look real nice, and then put a whole product around it. I can buy that story. The part that I can't buy is how it charges over solar. That to me seems like vaporware.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. Two things that stand out to me right off the bat is one, there's absolutely no indication of solar anything on any part of that notebook if you look closely.
Yeah, they have this one picture. I know, like this picture is very vague.
But even the back of it. So that
does the top pop off? Maybe this top folds down, and that's. Matt, maybe this is the solar panel. This top.
I think here's what I think they're probably doing, and this is going to suck if this is what they're doing, but they're probably got some weird OEM Toughbook-like thing, and they've got some sort of a connector on a secondary device, which I'll bet you money this is what it is. That
link in
exactly.
So look at that.
So you build up a ton of buzz with a lot of nonsense, and it's like, oh hey, by the way, we just OEM'd a
What
solar
if it's
panel.
a fold down thing where this? What if it's where this pops down? See, there's like a little look. Almost looks like there's a little hatch right there, little hinge.
But why don't they show that? See, it's not just skeptical. It's just I can't.
It's why it almost seems like in this video, like they don't even have any like renders of it. It's all stock photo.
So think of it from a marketing perspective. You're some weak company that really has no marketing ability at all. You have no dollars, but you need something viral.
Yeah.
Push this.
This really did.
Slap in a solar panel later on as far as just connect to it. Yeah. And all of a sudden you're selling stuff.
I mean, this is why we covered it on the show because it went so viral. I mean, like I saw so many people. It's
brilliant from a marketing perspective, but I call bunk on it. I think it's nonsense.
So I want to zoom in on this here because see, it looks like that's a hinge on the.
It screams Toughbook to me though.
Doesn't it look like this? It looks like this part that you don't like is the panel.
I hope so. I just need to see more.
Yeah.
Well,
we have 30 days. We got 30 days.
You got 30 days to get one in my lap. That's all I'm saying. You gotta get. You want to convince me? You gotta send me one. I gotta play with this.
Oh, I shed a tear this week, Matt. I shed a tear. So, what do I got?
Oh my goodness!
What is this right here? What do I have right here?
Roku. No, it's a Boxy box.
This is a Boxy box. This is the Boxy box.
Yep.
This is a Linux-powered machine. Great media center software. The Boxy software was an offshoot of XBMC. Then they kind of started to go down this route of we want to build hardware only, and so they built this machine with D-Link. It had some issues, but honestly,
perfect, but it was cool.
It seemed like something that maybe 2 or 3 patches would solve.
Sure.
And with Boxy Box Plus on here, which you recommended, it is already better and faster. Then they went away from this route and went to more of a set-top pizza box and combined it with this cloud DVR service.
Interesting.
And they said, we're not so much about streaming media off your local network anymore. So the original philosophy was, if you want Netflix, we got that.
Right.
If you want to stream off a software share, we got that.
Myself.
Right. That was the original philosophy. Well, then they went the route of the set-top box.
Then they went to basically look exactly like Roku, in my opinion.
And they combined it with this cloud DVR.
Yeah.
And the idea was essentially unlimited recording space because they store it in the cloud, right? And so you don't have to worry about your hard drive size on your machine. Well, this week, Samsung announced that they have acquired Boxy Box for $30 million. And as part of the acquisition, they will be shutting down the cloud service this weekend.
Oh, absolutely. Because when you buy a product, the first thing you do is you shut down the only thing differentiating it from your competition because, gosh, that's important.
I know. So now the one thing that did make it different from the Roku has been squashed. And all these people who bought the box, right? Because one of the reasons you bought this Boxy box was for the cloud service because that was its #1 feature.
And switch. Sorry.
Yeah. Yeah. Right? Like, hey, how about till the end of summer? How about something like that? And this is... So this is what's making Chris an old hippie, an old Linux hippie. Is this right here? Is this kind of crap? When you have backdoors built into proprietary software for the NSA, and then you have proprietary products that get sold, and then immediately will have their cloud services turned off upon acquisition. Sure. I just don't want to bet the farm on any of these guys anymore. I want it local. I want to manage it myself. I want to be able to view the code. Not that I ever would, but you know what? If I get real paranoid one day and I want to go hire a contractor for a few $100s to audit code for me, I want the option.
Exactly.
And I want to know that if I invest my money and my time into a product, it's not going to get sold and then turned off on me. And this is going to be a major erosion of consumer trust in cloud computing when you have these kinds of things that keep happening. At least savvy consumers.
I think so. And I think that's the key factor is the savvy consumers. I don't think that, sadly, and I hate saying this, but sadly, Joe Average doesn't get the importance of it. They should. They need to. We need to educate them on the importance, but they don't get it.
Chat room says I've gone full unfiltered about the NSA thing. And what I just mean by that is... You know, we see...
Well, they're trolling us. It's just annoying. I mean,
you see you see indications where maybe there's private keys built into Windows that the NSA has access to, and that sounds potentially, very conspiracy, but there is reasonable doubt, at least, to be had now. And with open source, that doubt can be removed. And I think this is an element to open source security that is very hard to quantify until you think about it in the context of having full faith in that your software is doing absolutely what you expect your software to do.
Well, a good analogy maybe would be what I used to call the landlord argument. If you own a home, you're the only one with the keys. Even the bank doesn't have a set. Okay, if you're actually renting from somebody, your landlord has keys to your home. Ideally, there's no reason for them to be snooping through your underwear drawer. But
it could happen.
It could happen. And by the way, it has happened to me. Not in my underwear drawer, but my wife. So I'm just saying, you don't think it doesn't happen. So when we talk about this NSA stuff, it's like it shouldn't happen, but you don't know. You're dealing with human beings. Human beings can be a little weird. You don't know. Just saying. People are people.
New York Times has confirmed the acquisition of Samsung, or Samsung's acquisition of Boxy Box. They say they also confirmed the $30 million figure. Samsung has acquired key talent from Boxy as well. Maybe we'll see some of this integrated into Samsung TVs. Maybe.
I hope so. I mean, if they can do something non-stupid with it, that's cool. But I don't know. I'm not buying it.
If I could fantasize, Samsung TVs would have Boxy Box software embedded in them, and that would be Linux based.
That would be cool if it had the functionality we want. See, here's what I see. I see stripped down.
Samsung TV.
Yeah,
I prefer to have an external box and have. I just want a very high resolution dumb display that I can swap out every 5 to 10 years.
And see, what they're wanting to do is, because they're a hardware seller and a hardware manufacturer, they're wanting to make sure that you go buy a new TV set, then they're going to probably give you a stripped-down version of Boxy Box.
Right.
That basically it's not really any different than anything you get anywhere else now.
And in order to upgrade the CPU, so like, when a new Roku comes out, when the Roku 3 comes out, you can unplug the Roku 1 that you got and plug in the new Roku, and you have a faster CPU and a better UI.
And just HDMI in it, and you're done.
These new TVs, it's built in, so if you want a faster CPU,
tough.
Yeah.
Unless you want to drop a few grand.
Something that might make those of you out there on the PC want to get a faster CPU is a little Linux gaming news.
Oh, yeah.
So there's this game out there that I've been hearing a lot of buzz about, but as a Linux user, it's one of those things I've seen, but I've been like, it doesn't apply to me, not affected, not paying attention.
Exactly. You become detached.
I filter it out. I'm like, you know what, if that's a game that's not coming to Linux, meh is what I say, Matt. I say meh.
Meh.
Well, Natural Selection 2, this is the game I'm talking about. Now, prepare yourself for amazement, Matt. Now, this game looks really, really good. It is like a first-person shooter meets a overhead strategy game.
Oh, that could be cool.
So you can play stuff overhead, and then you go in and you do a first-person shooter.
I like the idea.
And there's a lot of there's the kind of buzz around this game where you have industry-generated buzz where they buy marketing, and then you also have buzz in the game industry where players are just so excited about a game.
That's the buzz you really want.
And this is the buzz this game has. Here's a little note. It's been under development for a while. Okay. They've announced that they're switching over some of their stuff to Lua. And the other thing that they've announced, and this is the first time I think we've seen these, at least publicly posted, is screenshots of the game running on Linux. Whoa. Here it is running on Linux Mint on the Mate desktop.
Wow.
Yep. And then here it is running on Ubuntu. They said, you might guess, that's the Linux Ubuntu desktop running the Unity interface. These screenshots were taken on Max's work machines and somebody else's, respectively, at the same time. They show that not only is Natural Selection 2 running on Linux, we're even starting to successfully trial actual network play. So we could have Linux players connected to Windows players and etc. This does not mean we're about to release NS2 on Linux, but we're getting damn close. This is real. Cool. We're aiming for true Steam Play integration between Windows, Linux, and Mac.
Important and good.
Yeah.
Very good.
They'll have more progress to report over the coming weeks. I thought I'd play a little bit of the trailer because it's very it's very visual heavy for you audio listeners, but I'll we'll give you a little.
Narrate a little bit.
It looks like a really fun game. The genius of Counter-Strike and StarCraft combined.
In a war.
There's lots of spaceships. It looks incredible.
It does look incredible.
Okay, so this is one of the cool things about this, is you can play as the humans fighting the aliens.
Okay.
Or you can play as the aliens. And
that's what I want.
And when you play as the aliens, see, there's the overhead view. You see that? So you get the overhead view.
Yes.
Very strategic. And then when you play as the aliens, you're down on the ground, you got their feet and mouth. And
oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Got some teleporting.
Here's the monster view a little bit.
Whoa! Oh, dude.
Yeah, and it's very fast.
Right there. It's got mouth view. For the audio listeners, it's like mouth view on the end.
Look at that one. Look at that one.
Oh my God!
How great is this game?
That is. Oh, wow, that can rip off there.
Yeah. So this is gonna be cool. This is gonna be one that I definitely want to try out. Probably covered on the show.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Multiplayer, obviously.
It's like if I had a Christmas list of all the stuff I want in a game, I think this just nailed it.
Yeah, essentially they've gone down the wish list. Exactly right. So looking forward to that. Natural Selection 2 coming to Linux soon, and we'll let you guys know when it's available. Oh, there's another shot of the overhead view again, which I think is a really interesting thing to combine the two.
I think it's helpful. Oh, the alien view is what sells me, man. That's just so cool.
Yeah. There used to be an old Alien versus Predator game where you could play the alien, and I just loved that.
Man, that would be awesome.
All right, speaking of video game news, a little Left 4 Dead update. Left 4 Dead 2 comes out of beta for Linux. Woohoo! We've actually covered the beta here on the show. I did a little live gameplay, so we don't need to go through that again. But Left 4 Dead 2, great zombie first-person shooter. So much fun to play with a buddy or a few. One of my absolute best online gaming experiences was Left 4 Dead and Left 4 Dead 2. So go check out that. It's in Steam now. Cool. Like if you're watching soon enough, you might be able to catch it. It had like a 75% off sale.
Ooh, now's the time, folks. 75% off. That's nice.
That ain't nothing, right?
That's nothing to sneeze at.
All right, last couple of things are kind of tech-focused, sort of future stuff for Linux. A lot of things that not everyone's going to get their hands on too soon unless you're a Gen 2
But it's good to know.
or Arch user.
Yeah, exactly.
I wanted to cover a couple of new technology in Linux 3.10. Now, we covered a few weeks ago, remember Linus was getting kind of grumpy about this kernel release, saying he was going to start swearing at people.
Grumpy? Come on.
Well, he buckled down and they got it out.
Good for him.
And they got it out, and everybody's fairly happy. Torvalds is not perfectly happy, but he's fairly happy. He did manage to do a little mini aberration in there, but nothing.
You got to do a
bad.
tirade to get. That's kind of like part of the process of releasing it.
There's just a couple of features I want to focus on because I think they're pretty exciting. The one that most people are really talking about is some changes in the storage stuff, Bcache. We're going to get to that in just a second. But something else that's coming up, and it's a two-part feature set that's coming. First now is the Radeon driver in the Linux kernel has a new interfaces for unified video decoder. That's the decoding acceleration chip on ATI chips. Wow. So if you got an ATI card, in some cases now video playback and encoding will be offloaded to the CPU if the application supports it. Phase 2, and probably Linux kernel 3.11, is going to be better support for power management on ATI cards to have them use less power in incorrect circumstances. That comes next. Now, here's the part that I think everybody's talking about. It's called Bcache. And this is why you're going to want 3.10, potentially. You might have heard of DM cache. Well, this is a little different. It's integrated. That was integrated in 3.9. This is a second framework, cache framework that's been added to the kernel. And the idea is came from Google. They use it in their data center, and it allows you to allocate one part of storage to cache another storage. And it's file system agnostic, and it is actually drive technology agnostic. But the way I think most people use it is maybe you have a large XFS array or Btrfs or extended 4 array of drives. And you have lots of data on there, but maybe only 10 to 20% of that data is accessed frequently. This is a very common use case scenario for file stores and web servers and things like that.
Prioritize.
So Bcache lets the kernel manage frequently accessed files in this other cache. So you could, if you've heard of Mac OS X's Fusion Drive,
I have.
It's a little bit like that. The kernel can take files that you need the most frequently on your slower storage and move them into a dedicated spot on the SSD storage. And then when you're launching as the user, the kernel will say, well, I need to retrieve this file from the SSD and the other file from the storage, and it sort of accelerates all of this for you transparently.
Right.
And now, out of the box, there's a lot of applications for it in the data center. But I would think it would be really interesting to see if potentially some distribution at some point built a tool around this to let users sort of have a Fusion Drive-like experience that you now get in the new Mac OS X.
That would be awesome. I'll bet you they do. I bet you we'll see that.
I bet you they're right. There are lots of other things, including some great new performance tracing counters that are included in the kernel, network driver improvements, and things like that. But those are the main things I wanted to focus on. We're not going to get our hands on it right away, obviously.
Little fresh out of the box, probably a little more time in the oven, but it's pretty exciting to think about.
Ubuntu 3.10 this week in development, obviously, just updated to the 3.10 kernel as well. So Ubuntu 13.10 will ship with 3.10.
Okay. It's got a 3 in there. Yeah.
Okay,
Awesome.
one more thing that's kind of a tech preview that we're probably not going to get our hands on for a while, but you LXDE users could see some big changes coming down the road. LXDE is demoing a Qt version of the LXDE desktop.
Whoa.
Yeah, so obviously they're not ending the GTK Plus version.
Okay, so this is kind of an alternative then you can choose?
Developers got itches, Matt. Developers got
Gotta
itches.
itch those itches.
They got to be scratched.
Gotta be scratched.
They got to be scratched. It actually, it's looking pretty positive. It's currently in its current implementation using more memory than the GTK version because it also requires loading some GTK libraries because not everything's moved over yet.
Right.
So
it would have to, which kind of defeats. See, that kind of defeats the purpose, though. I don't know unless they can refine that.
They'll work on it. As they because like for example, in this shot right here, the program he used to take the screenshot is a GTK application. And if you load one GTK application, then those libraries in memory.
Right.
So the moment, it's
that's true. So it's already a mood issue.
Yeah.
Okay.
So for a lot of people, you're not going to avoid it, but they are their intention is to have all of the base LXDE stuff in Qt, and they've essentially replicated a lot of the current functionality in Qt. I just think it's very interesting because
it could be very, very interesting, and it may actually create a better experience in the long run.
It essentially looks the same.
Yeah, it looks the same, but maybe it'll do something new and different.
there's a lot of momentum behind Qt right now, and
I guess I don't understand their motive. I'm not knocking them by any means. I think anything like this is cool. I want to understand the rationale.
Why have you done this? You know, I think part of it is because they've been wondering. You know, you look at something like this and you think, can we do it? Is it possible?
Well, I guess it's kind of like sending a man to the moon. It's like, you know, it may not appear on the surface to have a practical value, but, you know, it could be very cool. And new technologies and
I think a lot of developers look at this kind of stuff and they think to themselves, you know, I know that they can do this other thing over here. Right. And I want to go try that to see if that would solve a problem we have. And then they go down that path and they're like, oh, man, we can't go back the other way. This is so great. I think that's maybe what happened here.
Could be. And like you said, there's momentum behind Qt, so that makes sense that they may want to get behind that and not be left behind.
Yeah. We'll see where it goes. And look at Qt grow. Look at it grow, Matt, like a little flower getting watered. Little flower. All right, Matt. Well, that's all the news for this week. Matt, there's a topic out there right now that seems to have people riled up, and that's display servers of all things.
It just seems like it's almost become like a holy war.
I know, and people are probably wondering, like, A, why is everybody all worked up? Right. B, what is the actual ramifications of these big changes? And C, why are we bothering with all of it in the first place?
Yeah, what's the motivation and the reason and need for the change?
Good questions, and we're going to try to answer some of those. Before we start, I want to thank our segment sponsor, s27e08, creators of the finest machines in the world, designed from the ground up to run Linux. And this week, so I was trying out Mir on my Bonobo Extreme.
Oh yeah.
I've got the Bonobo Extreme from System76, dual hard drives, Core i7 processors, monster NVIDIA GPU in this thing, 17.3-inch 1080p. Beautiful display.
Gorgeous stuff.
HDMI out, DisplayPort out, right? All this stuff. But it also has USB 3.0.
Which is just a score in itself, right?
So,
yes.
I have this little drive tray here that has this Western Digital Enterprise 10,000 RPM storage drive in it, right? And then I plug that into a USB 3 little caddy.
Interesting.
Plug this bad boy into the Bonobes, right? And I was running Ubuntu 13.10 off of this hard drive, trying out Mir without ever messing up my Arch installation.
That's cool.
It was lightning fast, super fast, and I'm able to get absolute blazing speeds over USB 3 and a 10,000 RPM hard drive. And the way the Bonobo works is when it boots up, you get a System76 logo, and it says press F7 to select your boot device. You just hit F7, and then it just detects all the USB devices on your system. And I just selected this from the list, and it just boots it.
Gotta love that, right? Yeah. And you never had to mess with your initial installation, which is awesome, without having to depend on the
it's nice knowing I have a machine here where I can throw the open source video driver on there. It's going to work fantastic, so I can try out Mir. That's one of the benefits of having a machine that has been designed to run Linux, is that I can try out a lot of the stuff as it's up and coming. I don't have to worry about compatibility. Yeah, I never worry about compatibility.
Score.
They've got a bunch of great machines over at System76. The one I want to point out is their new Ultra Pro. This thing is super thin, super light, beautiful screen. Absolutely. If I was in the market right now to buy a machine,
I'd be all over it.
I want to put myself in the market just to get this machine. Just to get that machine.
Oh, yes.
You know, when they roll out a new product like this, too, System76 is in that stage as a company where they've really found their groove, and they really get products. They get what they're going to have to do to support that product. They get what the life cycle of that product's going to be like, and they know through and through how to build these things to last, and that's what's great right now. They are just absolutely the top of their game. This Ultra Pro looks amazing. Go to System76.com. When you're checking out, tell them right there in the note that the Linux Action Show sent you.
Good stuff. It's a great build. Go get one. Thanks
to System76 for sponsoring the Linux Action Show.
Absolutely.
All right, Mir. Let's start before we go down the path of Mir. Is why?
Why do we need Mir? What's the
why
motivation?
Is X11 so obsolete? This was a great question that Louis DK submitted to our subreddit this week. He said, I don't get why people think that X11 is obsolete.
It's a good question.
It can be a performance issue because it runs fine on. It can't be because it runs fine on slower hardware with even 64 megs of RAM or less. I don't see why Canonical thinks it's not good for mobile. It scales just fine on mobile devices like the old Nokia N900 and the newer N9. I think that's also very good.
Fair point, really.
Yep. Yeah. Because I own both devices myself. And these devices have no fluffy boot with text messages and so on. It's very seamless. It's a very seamless boot process. Sure, X11 is old, and there may have some old used code in it, but I don't see why they don't just fix that instead of doing something from scratch. And he goes on kind of, to make some interesting observations right there. And I want to start...
I think that's a good point. It's like
a good starting point. Why, right?
What is that motivation? What's that one key piece that makes everyone want to drop that and jump over to something else?
Now, there's not really like a one-sentence answer.
No, there's really not.
It really comes down to the fact that X11 is 26 years old.
Which is quite old.
And the main thing, and this is, I think somebody made even this comment in our subreddit, the best thing about, the way to think of X11 is it was designed at first to put a couple of terminal windows up on a screen.
Right.
And then they built everything on top of that. And we're talking everything. Back in the day, there weren't printing subsystems, for example. So X has a printing subsystem built into it to manage your printers. They've just walled the code off, as they call it. There's lots of walled off code in X11. So there is this issue where you have three, some people say five, I've heard as few as three people who truly, truly understand it from top to bottom. And if those three people were ever hit by a bus, we'd be in a world of hurt.
That's an interesting point because, yeah, I mean, if they're gone, then what then? I mean, even if you have other developers, they don't truly, really get all the underlying code.
Right. X11 is truly the workarounds of all workarounds, and it has been for about 26 years now. And one of the things that Carl from s27e08, the CEO, pointed out when we were doing an interview with him, he said that X has a built-in limit of how high you can get that DPI. And when you're talking like touch devices that have DPI of 320 DPI, X just can't deliver on that.
No, it can't.
And that's a technical limitation there. But I'll give you a few practical examples of where actually X has probably held you back and you never realized it.
Okay.
Have you ever been watching a YouTube video and scrolled, and just for a brief moment, the video didn't track the scroll of your page? And
multiple times.
That's because X really has no idea what it's doing in that scenario, and it's just doing the best it can to try to make everything show up on the screen around the same time. But it has no guarantees. Everything is windowed. That little video is a sub-window, and it has to move that independently of you moving your browser window.
Just lots of extra overhead nonsense.
It's a little bit of a hack to get it to work. I'll give you another example. Have you ever woken up your machine from sleep, and maybe you accidentally left something playing in the background, or something triggers something to start playing?
Sure.
And you can't mute your audio fast enough because you have to type in your password and hit enter and then get in because your media keys don't work.
That's right.
And the reason for that, and this is why screensavers are a huge hack in X, is everything is just a window to X11. And you can have windows that supposedly are allowed to go on top of all other windows, and you can have input boxes that supposedly are allowed to steal input from everything else. So what a screensaver is essentially an application that tells X, put me on top and steal input from any other application. The problem is if you have something like media keys, your media key input gets sent to the screensaver instead of getting sent to your window manager. So KWin might know how to turn down your volume, but because the X11 screensaver has overridden all control, you can't manage that.
You know, my big takeaway is it just feels like that not only is it dated, but it's really just kind of a big hack.
Yeah, they looked at ways to try to fix that particular problem where you could have media keys at your screensaver, and they discovered they'd essentially have to break so much of X to make that work that they just couldn't do it.
And so they can't escalate that as priority enough to obviously do that, so it needs to come back down.
It would kind of involve rewriting the way X works, and at that point, you might as well do Wayland. So now we have things like Wayland. And there's a whole list. I could continue to go down, like all these little, like, a video game crashes in full screen and all of a sudden your machine's stuck in some crazy resolution.
So these little issues by themselves.
Or you hook up an external monitor and it loses all of your settings.
Right.
That's pretty much X's fault. Right?
So I think all these little issues together are really what make it kind of go, okay, this is a problem.
And then you combine that with the cruft, you combine that with the limited set of experts who truly understand it top to bottom, and now you have the situation we're in today.
Yeah.
And so we need to replace it with something. And enter Wayland and Mir. Now, the controversial thing, and by the way, I will link in the show notes to a really great write-up that Phronix has called The Wayland Situation. They go into a lot of technical details of the failings of X, talk a lot about its input subsystems and a ton of the compositing problems. Just a great 3-4 page write-up on the issues why we need to move to something else. So if you really want to dig into that topic, I got you covered. Link in the show notes.
There were some good valid arguments in there.
Yeah. I want to talk about this article run on June 17th over at linuxweekly.net. They sum up the MIR situation like this. The Ubuntu desktop has been committed to the Unity shell for some time. More recently, Canonical also announced that Ubuntu will be moving over to the new in-house MIR display server. That decision has raised a number of eyebrows at the time, given that most of the desktop Linux community had long since settled on Wayland as a way forward. As time passes, though, the degree to which Canonical is breaking from the rest of the community is becoming increasingly clear. The Linux desktop could never be described as being unified, but the split caused by projects like Mir and Surface Flinger may prove to be more profound than the desktop wars of the past. And I want to read that last sentence again because I think this is going to be the crux of our segment today.
All right.
The split caused by projects like Mir and Surface Flinger may prove to be more profound than the desktop wars of the past.
Potentially.
KDE GNOME.
Yeah.
GTK Qt.
Right.
And I actually completely agree. I think, if anything, we've been making too little of a big deal out of this whole Mir Wayland situation. I actually think it turns out 2013 saw the birth of one of the biggest changes in desktop Linux. We will look back at this year as the year that the Linux desktop was changed forever. Now, I don't know if that's a bad thing or a good thing, but what we essentially have, and I've been reading the KDE developers on Google Plus.
What their thoughts are on it.
Yeah, and they have some very, very strong thoughts on it. And I thought this was a great example. Here we have Martin, and I'm not going to get his last name right, so I'm not going to try. He's a KDE developer. He said, I just invested time. Of course, he's obviously a little hostile right there. Right? Yeah. I mean, literally that has hostility to it, but he's upset, and I'll tell you why.
Sure.
I just invested time to watch this Kubuntu on XMIR video. Now, if you're not familiar, XMIR is essentially an X driver that allows X applications to run inside a full-screen Mir window. And I'm going to get to that a little bit more as I talk about my hands-on experience with Mir. He said, I observed incorrect behavior being shown in the video. I'm pretty sure nobody else noticed it so far. You need to know KWin very well to notice it. And that's the point why I recommend to Kubuntu developers not to use XMIR in their stack. To be fair, the behavior I observed in the video was reported once by exactly one user shortly after the change in 4.11 affecting the code area. We have not been able to reproduce, and nobody else has ever reported it. How are the chances that just this video exposes the bug, even with KDE 4.10? And that's the point I told the Kubuntu developers. If something like this happens, we would immediately jump to the conclusion it's the fault of XMIR, cannot reproduce here, and close the bug.
Right.
And so XMIR, to developers like the KWin developers, introduces this layer between them, the hardware, and the display server. Another layer where there's the potential for some sort of wonkiness. Now, according to Ubuntu developers, very little potential because it's very much just pretty much the standard X implementation. They've touched about 2,000 lines of codes, but it's possible that you're introducing a new layer where KWin won't behave properly or GNOME won't behave properly, and only Ubuntu users will have this problem.
Well, and see, this is why I see it as less of an issue or less of a oh my gosh kind of issue. Is that it goes back to the thing I've been saying all along, in that if they do this, and there is a significant bug, and it does mean that you boot into Ubuntu and you can't use applications because of that, that problem's going to be solved real quick when someone switches to another distro. For me, it's almost better to have Mir and Wayland, because if one really screws up, you can go to another display server.
Yeah.
I mean, to me, that kind of seems like, or let's say Wayland really screwed up. I'm not saying they would. You could go to Mir, or you could go back to X, or I mean, you have some freedom there. More is better.
Yeah,
more is better.
Yeah. And obviously, the competition between the two projects spurs on innovation. I think we've already seen that bear
props to him for catching the bug. That needs to be talked about. Absolutely.
So you can kind of see, though, how developers are kind of already taking a stance against Mir that's a little bit... So here's how they see it. And this comment thread, which is 49 deep, goes on and on and on. What they say is essentially their take is Canonical is making decisions which only benefit them and is harming essentially everyone else. Mir is built specifically for Unity, and KWin will kind of sort of run on it, but there will be issues. Additionally, Canonical is putting the onus on the community to fix the problems that Mir will cause, whereas Wayland is a solution for everyone. And if you look down at the technical brass tacks, there's very little technical reason for Mir. It's more about it's Canonical's path that they want to take. It gives them full control of the stack. It lets them implement some differentiating features.
Sure. But the statement is I'm going to say the statement's crap to begin with, in the sense that it only benefits them, and it's not benefiting the community, as they say. Basically it's going to create issues and so on and so forth. That self-corrects. I mean, I go back to that statement over and over. It will self-correct. It will. It just will. When you use a distro and you end up distro hopping, that's self-correction happening. In this particular case, it's going to happen with the.
How do you prevent? So I think your assumption here assumes that the applications will be available for a different distro.
Sure.
But if you're writing something in using this Ubuntu IDE that's going to be supposedly released in beta at the end of this month, that writes to Unity and writes to Mir,
right?
That app might
still
only run on Ubuntu.
It will for a time being, but let's take Steam for example. Let's say that Steam was really tight about it and they weren't even going to allow anything to happen on other distros, which they're not officially doing either way, but whatever. So we're they're Ubuntu only, and Ubuntu does this whole Mir thing and it just blows up in their face and it just stinks all to high heaven. And you have Steam that was supposed to run on it, but of course now it doesn't run well, or maybe it only runs on Ubuntu, but Ubuntu's losing users, and Steam is then losing motivation to support Ubuntu. But they're seeing development on other desktops. They're then presented with an alternative to where they may need to actually look at reaching out to other distros.
All right, let me see if this changes your tune.
Okay.
So here is the current state of Mir. I this weekend ran Mir out here on my Bonobes, and I posted a screenshot. It's funny, even me posting the screenshot to G+ generated a 45 comment long thread about the validity of Mir.
Right.
Because here's the main issue. If you look at my screenshot, you'll see that I have, and I'm not running Xmir now because there's no way for me to do dual video. So there's nothing, and there's not a lot for me to actually show you.
Really, yeah.
Essentially, what we have in 13.10 is you have Mir starts up. It goes into full screen.
Okay.
And then in this full screen, it starts an X server.
Sure.
And then it displays everything inside this full screen. And so it's a window server inside a window server. And you actually can tell because in this screenshot I have two mouse cursors.
Right.
Because there's the Mir mouse cursor.
Oh, see this?
And then there's the X out mouse cursor.
Oh my God.
And what's a little disingenuous and makes me have a little bit of pause is the actual messaging from Canonical employees.
Right.
Is that this is a feature to let users know they're using Xmir, which is actually totally crap. It is a bug, and it is representative of what a hack this actually is.
Well, you know what? I could actually see, looking at a developer's mindset versus a normal person, just a casual user, rather. I can see a developer saying, oh, well, that extra layer of feature, that extra notability, whatever, they see it as, most people are going to find that irritating. But I still say this. I have to self-correct.
I think it's
total spin.
They're spinning already. They are overselling what they're capable of. Now I'm impressed that I was able to get it this far, this early into it. So I want to keep that in context. But the fact that we're getting that kind of spin makes me a little nervous. And here's where I see things Here's where I kind of see things going is. At a time right now, the Linux desktop is actually, in a lot of ways, sort of coming together around standards.
It is slowly,
you have systemd, which a lot of distributions are adopting. You have the movement to Wayland. There's a lot of these things, these abstraction layers that are bringing commonality across the different distributions.
Right.
And Ubuntu, I believe, if they were only making a desktop product, would absolutely ship with Wayland and all of these things.
True.
And I think that's sort of the damning statement of it all, because as desktop users, we're not being really taken care of. We're sort of getting... not a raw deal, but we're going to get a half-baked solution. I mean, we're going to get a hack-together solution for a while.
And that's where I see a lot. There's been an exodus ever since Unity first came about, and I think there's going to be another exodus at some point. And if it gets bad enough, the companies may wise up and stop, collaborating with the folks behind Ubuntu and actually start looking at collaborating with, I don't know, maybe Linux Mint. Who are going to be going a different direction. I don't believe they're going to be going with Mir. So, I think this will eventually...
See, GT Arrow, and I think he might have a good point, because we observe this disconnect where the people that watch this show are the distro hoppers. They are the power users. But GT Arrow says, you're assuming that the majority of Ubuntu users are willing to distro hop. It's likely that many of them have bought the hype and believe that all the other distros don't hold up. And, even you and I...
That's a good point, because they may not know different.
Before we switched to Arch, I was kind of like, no, you're not going to have Ubuntu's compatibility. You're not going to have the app selection. It's not possible. There is kind of this mentality, because Ubuntu was like that for so long.
It's almost a walled garden.
And it's like, on this show, when we talk about Ubuntu, the number one comment we'll get is, oh, it's the Ubuntu Action Show. You guys talk about Ubuntu too much. Yet, any video that puts Ubuntu in the title or anything like that will be dramatically better rated than the videos that don't.
Yeah.
So there's this disconnect between what people say they want and how people actually act. And I think the same is true when it comes to Ubuntu users distro hopping. I think the fact that Canonical has pushed and done so much already and still maintains that lead. And let's be clear, there are more Ubuntu users that visit our website than every other distro combined. Now, that gap is narrowing, but it is still this big gap.
Right.
And that is hard data metrics that I'm looking at that say people are not distro hopping.
That's true. That's
and
true.
so what if they come in and they sort of torpedo the quality of the Linux desktop with this?
That's true.
They break compatibility across distributions.
Yeah.
Really? So that way, eventually, one day, I can maybe get a carrier-controlled Ubuntu phone device.
Yeah, exactly.
Am I missing something here? Or is this...
Well, I think in the long run, and maybe I'm all wet on this, but I think in the long run, what's going to happen is there's going to eventually come a point to where Ubuntu users are going to forgive this for so long, and Windows users are great examples of this. Windows users will forgive unbelievable crap. They forgave ME, they forgave Vista,
all the service packs, and
all the service packs, lost license keys, all this nonsense. But then they started branching out. A lot of them started branching out to OS 10. A lot of them started branching out into Ubuntu, or even earlier than that, they started branching out into some of the other newbie distros. I think each individual is going to have a breaking point. And I think the people that are just like Joe Average, like maybe my parents, your parents, maybe the kids will be the ones pushing the parents into trying something new. So I think there's going to be an individual breaking point for each
people that are at that level, though, isn't I'm going to switch to Mint. It's I'm going to go to get a Mac.
Yeah, it could be.
Yeah.
And you may actually lose some ground.
Yeah,
and
I think so. I don't think people leave Ubuntu. I think they just leave Linux.
Could. Yeah, that's true. Although I think it depends on who's managing their desktop for them. If they're managing it themselves, they're done. A lot of these people don't even get their computers fixed. They just throw them away.
And maybe in the meantime, Google comes in and shows everybody how it's done with Chromebooks. I don't know.
Could be. And see, that could also happen. That could be the unseen factor that's going to come. They're just like idling, and they're waiting for Ubuntu to screw up, and they're going to come shooting up with the solution, and that could happen.
Looking at it technically, Wayland seems technically like the better product for desktop users.
I'm thinking so.
There's a lot. Yeah. There's a lot of people that are working on it that are very familiar with the technology, but there's also just plans they have. Either way, I think for the first early days in these display servers, we're going to rely heavily on MIR and Wayland,
which is not there's
going to be a transition period,
sure,
because everything's written for X.
That's right, and that's going to be just no matter which one you choose, that's going to be a fairly significant.
One
transition.
of the things we as silly monkeys that really should just be living in trees don't appreciate very much is we've sort of lived with X forever, and so we just kind of think that there's this grand compatibility across Linux distros when it comes to the display server, but this is one of the few areas that Linux has maintained compatibility over the last 26 years, and that's because of X. And now, starting in 2013...
We're breaking that now.
We're breaking that. Yeah. And people are going to have to make a call. And it's going to be interesting to see what direction it goes. And I suspect, because of this, for a long time, people will just keep routing to X for the longest time, and we as users will have a performance hit because we'll be running a window within a window, and there's going to be an extra layer there.
I almost see some lesser-known distros surging because of this, because the ones that stick to X for a long time, I could see that happening.
A lot of people probably just switch to Debian or Arch.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Yeah, literally. Yeah. I mean, literally they'll find, whether it be an advanced distribution or a newbie-friendly distro, I could see them definitely doing that. It's going to be interesting. It's trying to look in that crystal ball with all the fog and trying to figure out which direction it's going to go. I don't think MIR is going to be as successful as everyone's thinking it could be. I think they've really got their work cut out.
So here's the thing they have going. They have one thing that is sort of that Wayland can't really touch.
Okay.
They have this total vertical integration path. They only have to write for Ubuntu. They can from beginning to end, they can control the implementation. Different distributions might have different implementations of Wayland. I mean, technically, Wayland's a protocol that then you build things around, and so maybe Fedora will do it one way, and Mangia will do it in a different way, and there could be like this weird, awkward period, whereas with MIR, they're going to have a very laser-focused implementation of it. And so like for right now, for example, on Ubuntu, if you have the open source drivers and you follow the link's instructions, I have a link in the show notes that tells you how to get MIR running. When you install that, you're up and running on MIR right after it's installed if you're on the open source driver. The moment you switch to a proprietary driver, when MIR starts up, it does this little pre-flight check, and it says, oh, not running on open source driver, and it just transparently flips you back to X. So for right now, for example, to disable MIR, you just install a proprietary driver, and you're back on X. And so it's pretty easy to, in 13.10, it's going to be real easy to toggle back and forth between them.
So that may save their bacon for the short term.
Yeah.
That could.
And then in the next release, 14.04, that's where they want to have only be MIR, I believe.
They might pull. I think they may want to hang on to that little flippy switch you're talking about just a little longer, because I think that they may find themselves screwing the pooch otherwise.
Wouldn't it be interesting to see? I mean, I wonder in 1404 when that ships, are there going to be X PPAs where you add a PPA to your system and it's a repository that keeps X current, and you run a few commands and you swap out MIR and you install Xorg again.
Right. Well, and not only that, but thinking about developers. A lot of I don't think as many developers are embracing MIRs that Ubuntu guys like to think. I mean, really, if you think about it, if they're wrong and everybody's like, yeah, that's great, we're going Wayland, bye bye,
Yeah, you look at
then right it's kind of like so the 14 whatever comes out and it's like they're still not there.
Kubuntu, Lubuntu,
yeah.
Obviously the upstream KDE guys are very vocal. They're all kind of saying, thanks, but no thanks for right now.
Right. I have this feeling that they're gonna, but they'll have that little flip switch for a while. I don't think it's going to be as successful as they want it to be, unless they are literally willing to split themselves off in all capacities and such to where they're actually saying their own apps, their own everything. I mean, I don't know how.
Yeah,
well
it would be a
work.
slam dunk if MIR rolled out and it was like, oh, we've replaced the cruft of 26-year-old X, so all of your frame rates are 10% faster.
Exactly.
But it's not that.
Clear benefits instead, but there's not.
Especially running inside XMIR, it's not that. So right now, when I play with what you will discover when you play with MIR is you're actually using XMIR essentially.
Right.
And it looks just like you've always expected for general desktop use. The performance is fine. It's my desktop with the open source Nouveau driver.
You know what might end up happening as we, like maybe 2 years down the road or whatever, when they realize that's still not happening, but they want MIR for their mobile fun, and I get that. They may have a Wayland MIR switch instead of an XMIR switch.
Do you think so?
I don't think they're going to have a choice.
Wouldn't now be the time to do that?
I mean, that's what I would do, but they learned the hard way.
I was thinking like my fantasy would be Shuttleworth comes out with a white background, and he's got some great music.
Got a turtleneck,
Yeah. And he says, we've listened to the community, and we're going to double down in the open source community, and we're going to work on Wayland. And we're going to make Wayland, we're going to work to make Wayland awesome for Ubuntu.
I just don't think, I think what's going to happen is they're going to push and push and push and push and push, and they're going to realize that there's not enough applications to play ball with them, and they will literally have to do that. That way they can have their cake and eat it too.
Or they're always going to have to run some sort of compatibility layer.
That's what I think is going to have to happen. Because then they can do their whole mobile thing and seamless and
when you think about when you write an application for Windows, when you write an application for Mac OS X, you have to write it for their specific Windows server. So maybe they just think they're going to be in that category.
I think they're. I think they're going to. They're going to. Basically, they're going to make the user suffer during this course of learning. I don't think it's going to happen right away. I think it's going to probably be they're probably going to butt heads for about a year at least before they really get it.
And like Charon points out, a lot of applications, it depends on the application.
Yeah.
Standard apps, a lot of cases, they just write to a toolkit. That toolkit will have support for MIR or Wayland, and it'll be a mood issue. They won't even have to worry about it. There's other people that write other applications that need to talk a little lower level. That's gonna matter. Of course, the ones we care about the most are those types of applications: your Chromes, your Firefoxes, your video games, your window managers. They all need to talk a little closer to the display server. But stuff writing to the toolkit, it's not going to be so much of an issue. As our toolkits are getting better, Qt and GTK, they might just abstract this out for us. Who knows?
That's a good point.
But I will say this. I am now a firm believer that this needs to happen in one way or another. I'm also, if I was a betting man, I'd be putting my money on Wayland. I still think MIR is going to ship. Well, obviously, MIR is going to ship sooner in larger distribution. That's a given at this point.
I think MIR could be really awesome on the mobile front. I think that's cool. And maybe on some of the set-top boxes and whatever. But I don't know. I mean, I'm skeptical.
But it definitely it's worth being skeptical about. It's definitely at the point definitely at the point now where there's not just some technical limits, but just from a fit and finish and a user polish standpoint, to catch up with where the other operating systems are at, we got to get X out of here. X has got to go. It's been great for 26 years, but it's time for the Linux community to move on.
It really is.
All right, Matt. Well, there you go. If you guys want to go check out XMIR or MIR, there's not a lot to it. It basically. It's X Windows.
Do it for bragging rights. That's really all you're getting out of it.
All you need is the 1310 daily build, and it works better. It works best if you have an Intel video card, and we'll have links in the show notes that show you how to pin the PPA properly, and then do an apt-get update and get it installed. All right. Well, that's Linux Action Show's first hands-on look at MIR, that crazy display server. In this week's segment of Slash Etsy, we're going to talk a little bit about Fedora 19. Now, our chat room's a little split on the topic. Some people are excited and already running it. Some people said they couldn't give two shakes.
Seems that way.
Yeah, but I think I have figured out where Fedora might fit in your life.
You've actually figured out where they where their meaning.
I am ready to bestow this wisdom upon the Linux community, Matt. But first, I want to thank our segment sponsor, Untangle. Untangle.com/last. Now, Untangle, the creators of some beautiful firewalls designed to run Linux. Now, you can get their hardware appliances, which I was just consulting with a company who's starting their own. I can't say who. But they're a nationwide published magazine, and they're going to incorporate some live streaming into their media offerings. And they wanted a firewall that A, was easy to set up, and B, would hold up during a live stream production. And I said, well, guess what? Go check out untangle.com/last, and they bought one of their U150 appliances. Great little Intel dual-core machine running Linux in there, and they, I told them all about Untangle's superior content filtering capabilities, and I said, look, you guys are picking a device that's going to sit on the edge of your network that is responsible for protecting your network. You really want to make sure you're making a good choice. Now, I could have gone into the whole pitch like I do here on the show and say, go to untangle.com/last, download the free ISO on your own machine, check out how awesome it is, right?
Kind of beta test it.
I didn't need to. I just told them to go get the appliance. But if you out there, our savvy audience members, want to go check out Untangle, go to untangle.com/last, and they got a download link right there in the middle of the page. You download the ISO, load it on the machine you want, and then go see how this cool firewall has been built around the whole server rack concept. Super easy to manage for an expert or a noob. Untangle firewalls are absolutely great. So thanks to Untangle for sponsoring the Linux Action Show. And don't forget, if you decide to upgrade to one of their managed plans where they'll send you updates and filter content and things like that, use the code LAST20 when you check out. You save 20% off your order.
It's good stuff. They take care of it for you.
Absolutely. And thanks to Untangle for taking care of us with the segment sponsorship.
Big stuff.
That way we can do /Etsy.
Yes.
So, Fedora 19 hit the web this week, and it's got all of the fresh packages you might come to expect. Yeah. GNOME 3.8.
Got some good stuff there.
And XFCE 4.10, which is what I have loaded up here.
Oh, right on.
Yes, sir. And the other thing that's important to note about Fedora 19 is that this will be the version that the next major release of Red Hat Enterprise Linux is based off of.
Right, and so that's a key.
And usually whenever that happens in Fedora land, that release of Fedora is particularly a good one.
It is.
I believe that to be the case with Fedora 19 once again, Matt.
That's cool.
I ran into a few bugs.
Okay.
Just a few things. In fact, not always reproducible either. In fact, let's see if I go in.
I found that to be true myself.
They have a pretty good software manager here, and if I go in here, now this doesn't always happen, but one thing you might notice because of package kit and all those kinds of nice features that they have, I didn't get prompted for a password, right? Yep. My user actually has the privileges needed to do this. But if I click on... Actually, I think it's going to work this time. So I've discovered sometimes in their software manager, sometimes sub-package selections display, sometimes they didn't.
Of course, really?
When I wanted to install the XFCE desktop, this group wouldn't show up.
Right.
But I was able to do it via Yum at the command line. And Yum has gotten so great. I love the way it displays stuff. When you do Yum updates... it'll tell you, like, you have this many. Let's do a little. We'll try it right now. Let's do a Yum.
I think Yum's one of the bigger motivations for using it.
One of the things they do from a security standpoint is if you're not the super user, that stuff it is not in your path at all.
Not happening.
I think it's like update info. I think that's the command.
I believe so.
Yeah, it goes out, just like you would expect any distro, goes out and checks the repos. But see, when it's done here, it gives you this little summary. 2 bug fix notices, 2 enhancement notices. It also say 2 security notices.
And I think that's an argument for using Yum over using Package Kit as far as a front end versus just use the back end.
I really like the Yum command line.
Yummy.
So, where does Fedora 19 fit? You were saying on the pre-show, you just don't know.
Yeah, it's like it stinks because it's like here's a reasonably good distro. I mean, it's a fine distro. It does a great job. I got a Red Hat on my head.
It's got some great features. By the way, another Yum feature. Yum file system snapshot. Yum will snapshot your file system before it runs a package command, and then if that borks, you can actually roll back the file system.
I think, and this may have been what you were talking about earlier, maybe it is Yum that is really the motivation for sticking with Fedora. I mean, maybe that's enough to keep you, keep you latched on. But other than that, it's pretty much a vanilla Linux experience.
What changed that for me is because you're right. Well, actually, but back up. I say that's the good thing.
You think?
So one of my comments in the Arch review was that I felt like I was closer to upstream.
Right.
Fedora also very much has that feeling. Like you're writing from upstream, only unlike Arch, it's a little more managed, a little more curated, and a little more frozen, a little more snapshot.
Right. Okay.
So if you like the aspect of writing on the community code, off the code from the community.
Bleeding edge action there. Sure.
Right, but packaged up for you and then sort of updated for a while from the Fedora team. That's where I think it's like a lot of the good things of Arch, but in a distro that's a little more traditional.
Bleeding edge, but curated. Okay.
So I wonder if I can find it because I don't know where it gets stuck. But there's a couple of apps that I liked a lot.
Right.
One, let's see here. One was Yum Extender.
Oh, okay.
Yum Extender is pretty slick, and I guess it just comes default because I don't think I
it came default on my system.
And you get so here's new packages from some of my alternative repos. Like you can see, here's FFmpeg,
Which is cool.
Very cool, right?
Very cool.
I've got pending Yum actions, so I can see if I have a bunch of Yum actions pending. You've got the repositories right here that I can just turn on and turn off. This is very, very nice to manage. Also, because of the way all the logging works, here's all of my Yum history actions that I've taken. I can see what users have done them, what action was taken, erase, install, updates. And look, it even breaks out the packages that were updated and from which repos. I mean, oops, this is really nice.
It is actually very nice.
The other thing, and I don't know where it gets stuck in the, because I have only used XFC for about a day. I was using GNOME 3.8. Easy Life. I installed Easy Life from recommendation of the chat room, and there it is right here. Easy Life is a program that makes Fedora a little more usable for average users that like Codex, that like Java, that like Flash.
Oh,
and
it's like automatics for Ubuntu from back in the day. That's what it reminds me of. Yep.
So you can see right here, with one checkbox using Easy Life, it'll install the Codex for Fedora. The NVIDIA, I could do the NVIDIA driver right here from this list.
Skype even. Whoa.
Yeah. So this makes getting rolling on Fedora for your average user who has an MP3 collection a lot easier.
But here's the big question that, and I know this was an issue with like automatics, is that where's it getting its software from? Where is it pulling from? Is it pulling from what you already have, or is it pulling from some third-party mystery thing? Okay,
right.
Cool.
A combo, but it's mostly third-party repos. But
that's okay.
But with that Yum, what was it called?
Yum Extender.
Yeah, Yum Extender. I can go in there and I can turn the repos on and off that it adds.
That's okay then. Yeah. Okay, then you can use it safely because you got more control over it.
Yeah.
Okay.
And
or you should be more educated in what you're doing.
Once I loaded this up, Fedora started to feel a little bit more like home. I started to realize, okay, I got XFCE 410,
right?
Kernel 3.9. I've got all of the GTK apps that I know and love, and now I've got all my codecs. If I was a Red Hat system administrator, this would be a slam dunk.
Yes.
If I wanted to play with new tech, this is, and I didn't want to use Arch, this would be the way I go.
This would be a nice fallback. Sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
At least for a little while. Again, I'm not Fedora's biggest proponent here, but I actually think 19 is one of their nicest releases they got their installer in much better shape.
That was the thing. The first thing I noticed is when I was installing stuff, it did make me want to punch stuff. Yeah, I was like, oh, this is really nice.
It's still odd.
It's a little different, but it was a lot better than
Which is funny because Anaconda used to be one of my favorite installers of all of them. So it's kind of odd to see them take that new direction and then
I'm kind of liking it.
It's much more usable. Like it was they moved just a few things around. It didn't delete and destroy my partitions. All of these things were improvements from the last version. So a lot of people just totally bypassed 18 because of some of those problems. And 19, it solves a lot of that.
I'm pretty happy with that. Yeah, I found the installation to be much less annoying, and I thought it was interesting in that because of tools like Easy Life, the Fedora approach to restricted software and codecs and things like that becomes less of an issue because you don't necessarily have to participate in their policies on that. You can just do what you want to do.
Yeah.
You don't care.
Auto Plus is another app that helps to set up. RPM Fusion seems to be the main repo that Easy Life pulls from, which is a pretty well-known and respected
That's good to know.
Yeah.
That's good to know.
I'd say if you're a Fedora user or you've been Fedora curious, but you've heard some bad things, Fedora 19 fixes a lot of those things you might have heard.
It's true.
And I think in this release, they've got they're sort of a lot of times we've talked about they haven't found their footing. I think they're starting to decide where for power users who want the open source code workstation, it's like raw open source workstation that you could probably convince your CIO to let you deploy in the office, right?
Makes sense.
Where you come to your boss and maybe he's a little techie and say, I want to run Arch, just this rolling release, and I'll build my packages, and he's going to look at you and tell you go F yourself. At least back when I was sitting in a cubicle trying to let my boss get me to run Linux. But if I tell him here's this Fedora project, they take all the stuff, they package it up, they base Red Hat Enterprise Linux off that. That's a lot easier of a sell.
It makes sense because the word enterprise is actually implemented in that sentence.
In a trusted name.
The trusted name, and I think that I've heard of Red Hat. Okay, yeah, that's okay. They're participating in that. They're sponsoring that. I'm okay with that.
And for you old school fans, if you don't like XFCE, they've also got a Mate edition.
Nice.
Yeah,
that's cool.
So there you go. All right, Matt. Well, that's the Linux Action Show's look at Fedora 19. And that brings us to the end of this week's broadcast. But, Matt, before we get out of here, we got some emails to cover.
We do.
Actually, and not just emails, bit messages at that.
Oh, right on.
Give out the bit message address.
Love that.
And I should show this to you real quick. Look how ridiculous this is. Yeah. So, bit message, this new open source peer-to-peer email replacement, right?
Oh, you got a
fully
few.
encrypted. You don't have the metadata tracking issues that you have with email. Look at, I'm not going to show you the contents because some of these are private, but look at all of these bit messages. Look at all those that say last. You see all those that say last? Look at all those.
Oh, my gosh.
Yeah, so Bitmessage is, people are really loving Bitmessage. And if I let this run for a couple of minutes, you'll start to see a bunch more come in. It takes a minute or two. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Tons and tons and tons and tons of people that have been corresponding with me over Bitmessage. And I'm really loving this open source project. To me, it is an email killer for geeks that does not require an email server.
This could potentially be that catch-up on email solution you've been looking to separate.
The people who know.
Right. The people you really want to hear from are going to be coming in this way. Yeah.
Well, because I'm trying to help encourage this open source project, so I'm trying to foster usage of it.
Absolutely.
Here. So I am responding to people's messages. And I'll have our Bitmessage address in the show notes if you want to try out Bitmessage.
Maybe the de facto way to get a hold of you.
Well, let's not get crazy. Let's not.
Maybe subreddit. Okay.
Yeah. You see, but the one knock against is the CPU usage, but it's doing very complicated math. So
it is.
Yeah.
You got to give it a pass on that.
All right. So speaking of Bitmessage, our first bit of feedback this week came in via Bitmessage from Silvernode. He says, hey guys, so I've been curious about Linux Deepin for a while. That's how you say it?
I believe that's how I say it. I always call it Deepin.
Deepin. So he blanked off a partition and gave it a go. The good news is that Linux Deepin takes user experience to a new level. Everything looks fantastic. The application menus are super intuitive, and the team has also written a few of their very own applications, such as a custom software center, music player, and video player. We've talked about their software center quite a bit. The bad news: the default animation speed of minimizing and maximizing windows is beyond slow. He said, I really haven't used Linux Deepin much after the slow MIR issue, so I haven't dug deeper into the other features, but I'd be interested to hear your comments on Linux Deepin and see if you reach some of the initial opinions I had. Now, why have we not looked at this distro? We mentioned it.
I was thinking that the other day. I was thinking,
we mentioned their software center several times a season.
We need to review it because it'd be interesting to see if we can also duplicate the minimize issue too.
So maybe we'll try that in a /Etsy.
I think that's a good call.
So thanks, Silvernote, for sending that in.
Newbie distro.
Here's one for the chat room. Maybe you've got a suggestion. There could be some mount options. Chat room, how would you go about doing a read-only file system? Matt with 1T writes in.
Okay.
Hey, Matt and Chris, I was wondering if you guys have any tools or tips to help me out with my home network. I have a laptop that I use about 10 hours a day. I don't go crazy with kernel updates or anything because I need it to boot for work.
Right.
But I usually find some time throughout the week to troubleshoot the small stuff. Sounds about right?
Makes sense.
At home, I have a network of half a dozen machines running media players, file servers, etc. When I get home from work and turn on the TV, the last thing I want to do is troubleshoot my display settings and why they reverted to their old ways or why some media server is stuck in repeat mode. I spend lots of time setting these machines up, and it's discouraging to see entropy, take over. My mouth has entropy. I disable automatic updates and did the drive and, checked all that stuff. Everything's fine. But what I really want is a read-only file system, including /home, where many of my programs save behavioral config files. I use a program called Deep Freeze on all my family's machines, and it makes sure the C drive is read-only, so when they reboot, it flashes back to its original state. Is there anything like that for Linux that could produce that kind of behavior?
Boy. Nothing that's coming to mind off the top of my head.
Yeah, I mean, you could definitely mount your file system in read-only mode, but that usually generates so many errors. Right. I wonder if he couldn't experiment with identifying the applications that specifically give him trouble and then chmodding those particular config files to read-only.
That's an interesting
sort of taking a laser-focused approach. So instead of blasting the whole drive read-only, which is such a pain in the ass for updates. I know it sounds like a good idea, but my friend and I have tried this, and it always ends up biting me in the butt. You could go like Mondo Rescue route and things like that, but I would try precision chmodding.
That's an interesting idea. Yeah, I could see that having benefit. And where would you start? Like if some of the
well, if he's got a particular media player that's screwing up,
right.
or chmod those config files. You could like if you have home on its own partition, you can remount it using the -RO option to read only. And you could mount that thing as read-only and see what happens.
That might be a nice place
to start. You could boot it up, mount it as read-only for the day, and see what happens. I think you'll find it doesn't work so well for you.
I mean, it's got to be some errors that are happening with your home. That might be a little funky, but it'd be fun to try.
There's also, chat room's pointing out, some ways you could go with like live CDs where you have like a base config burned to a CD, and then you have like a spot where some stuff can get saved. There's some ways to play with that.
Kind of take a kiosk mode approach.
Yeah. But if anybody has any suggestions for Matt with a T, 1T, let us know. Now, here's a hard one. This kind of took me by surprise. Paul writes in. He says, podcasts are keeping me off Linux. I have a Mac and an iPhone, mainly because I love podcasts, and I've not found any other way to consume podcasts that works as well as the Apple solution. The only reason I want an iPhone is because of podcasts. I tried Android, and he gave up. He says, do you know of anything that could it gets me the ease of use that I get with the iPhone? In my experience, Android podcasting apps don't work as well as iTunes. I'm subscribed to about 100 podcasts, so my media library on my commute is synced over to my mobile device is the best method. I've used applications that work like iTunes on Mac and Ubuntu, but never managed to get them to work properly. In his blog post, he mentioned some of the apps he tried, and one of the features that he loves about the iPhone.
Yeah, that'll help me out.
I think I think like when you think of this, you think this is something I wouldn't like. He likes that you actually tether it to iTunes because he says while I'm syncing my 100 podcasts, it's also charging my iPhone. And to
that's
me,
a nice benefit.
While I'm charging my phone, I don't even think about the podcast aspect of it. I don't even think about iTunes. I just plug it in. My old podcasts get taken off. My new podcasts get put on, and my phone's charged.
Well, here, and this all depends on what kind of a network situation you have. But, you could do. First of all, gPodder. I'm a gPodder guy. I swear by it.
I like BashPodder, but I follow you.
But any type of gPodder, if you want a graphic, BashPodder's nice too. Anything like that. And then you can basically, if you want just easy, honestly, Dropbox. I mean, quite brutally honest. Yeah. And then if you want power, you plug it into the wall. You have your internet running, and you're charging your iPod, or you're charging your phone while you're. I
read his blog post, and the one app that I don't know if he tried, and I think this would be a particularly good one for him because it really does well when you have a lot of feeds. So I don't have TV, right?
Right.
I have satellite radio feeds that I quote unquote may or may not have. I use those for getting clips for Unfilter.
Oh yes.
But I don't actually have like TV service. So all of my general entertainment is from podcasts.
Okay.
I'm a podcast consumer myself. And the app that I like a lot, because I have quite a few, is Pocket Casts.
That's a good choice.
It's been a pick before on the show. One of the things that Pocket Cast, and he tried Dog Catcher. I don't recommend Dog Catcher. One of the things that Pocket Cast does that I like a lot is server-side refresh of your RSS feeds. So if you got 100 RSS feeds on your Pocket Cast device, instead of having the app, which is a huge pain in the ass on mobile devices, go out and refresh every single feed individually.
So it's doing it for you.
Pocket Cast takes care of that in the background. So when I go into Pocket Cast here, so Matt, they won't be able to see this, but I'll show you, right?
Sure.
So here's my Pocket Cast icon. When I launch that and I go to the main screen, it'll immediately see that the badge right there and the badge right there. It's already updated all of the feeds. I didn't hit refresh.
It reminds me of Plex. It's kind of
right.
It has a Plex-like
ready
interface.
to go. Yeah. So when you have a lot of feeds, Pocket Cast might be the way to go. Now you will be downloading those directly over Wi-Fi, but it has a very good management system. It's very clever about which ones are new, which ones are old. So if you haven't tried Pocket Cast, that's one to check out. I also would suggest to him that maybe using something like BashPodder, or the one that I have found a lot of success for, Subsonic.
Right.
Subsonic it's a little heavier to set up. It requires a web server, but man, when you got a lot of podcast feeds, nothing does better than Subsonic at managing that.
Rocks.
And then
Absolutely.
just sync it to the SD card. Just sync it over to the SD card. If you want desktop syncing, sync it to the SD card.
Exactly. And I think over the air at home or in the office or whatever it may be is perfectly plausible, especially when you have a good app doing the work for you.
Yeah, I mean, I would definitely start with Pocket Cast.
I think that's probably going to, it's going to be what I'd recommend too, because it seems like if it's, especially doing all the management of overhead and all that for you, it's designed to handle that overhead more so than maybe
And my
other
closing
solutions.
point would be, Paul, and we've made this point to somebody else who mailed in about iTunes a few weeks ago, is Apple is not going to support this config much longer, right?
No.
You got to figure...
They're going over air just like everybody else.
Yeah, and they eventually will drop that tethering altogether. And they probably eventually, it seems like, are on the direction to drop podcasts from iTunes and maybe break it out into its own app or something like that. They've already done it on iOS, so it seems likely they'll probably do it on the desktop side.
I can see them doing that, and I definitely think you're right about dropping the tethering because I mean they were already pushing iCloud so hard.
Yeah,
you know.
Yeah.
So.
And in fact, the new Lightning interface doesn't actually even natively support video itself.
Wow.
Kind of gives you an indication of where they're moving. Like the old 30-pin dock connector actually had like video wires in there. The new Lightning connector on the iPhone, it actually sends a encoded video signal over the line, and it's actually there's a little ARM processor at the other end of the connector that's decoding the video and then giving it a video signal. So weird. Apple is moving away very quickly from that model. So it's definitely worth keep exploring, Paul. Hacker O White writes in, wants to live stream his desktop. Dear Les, I've been watching Les for the past few months, along with Text Devin. Absolutely love your shows. He says, I'm even considering getting a Roku for Christmas because of last week's episode. Yeah, definitely.
Right on.
Just used the Roku last night with the built-in headphones. Anyways, a while ago, you showed Simple Screen Recorder as your app pick, and it's great, but I can't figure out how to stream to livestream.com. Simple Screen Recorder has a page about this, but he's never really tried it, and it involves probably linking FFmpeg. Thanks for all the great shows. Matt, it looks like you'll be wearing that monkey suit soon.
Yeah, it does, doesn't it? I mean,
he also
totally
says,
does.
don't forget to check out Manjaro, which you love.
Yeah, I'm actually kind of digging that.
Yeah. So, you can stream with FFmpeg. You can stream with VLC.
Yeah.
I was wondering if you had any recommendations for live streaming your desktop.
Boy.
You're going to bust out Webcam Studio, or what do you think?
No, Webcam Studio is pretty much, it kind of forked into a secondary project that's pretty young at this point. So, no, I'm not going to recommend that. I'm going to say if I want just ease of use, I don't care how it works, just make it happen. Simple, simple, simple. Honestly, you're probably going to be doing Google Plus.
Yeah,
Google Plus Hangout. I mean, there's no simpler way of doing it on Linux and working reliably and not wondering why it didn't work.
So here's what I would do.
So
I would go Matt's route. If you just want super simple, you go to Google Plus, you do a Hangout. The Hangout has the ability to watch your own screen and capture it. You can do lower thirds. I mean, you can start to do some of the stuff that we're
you've got
doing.
multiple desktops. It sees it and helps you.
Multiple windows are no problem. And if your account allows it, you can actually then record that, publish it right to YouTube. And then go use one of the YouTube downloaders to save the video.
Yep.
YouTube will encode it to an MP4 file for you, essentially.
That's right.
And then you go over there, use one of the Firefox extensions to do video downloads, and you've got it.
And what's cool is that while Google Plus will limit how many people can actually participate in your live stream, you can have a view-only live stream that anybody can see on YouTube. So
and once you download the MP4, you can do anything you want.
That's right. Yeah, it's all yours.
In fact, YouTube will also convert it to WebM.
It does WebM, and it has a lot of the lower thirds. Yeah. You can actually do various add-ons for it as well. So it's pretty cool. I'd recommend that.
Shane wrote in, says, "Hey, Chris and Matt. Saw you mention Play on Linux in the last few episodes of Last. Just wanted to mention that I love it. It's been one of the best ways to play Windows games on the Linux desktop. You can manage multiple wine versions and multiple wine prefixes from the GUI and included a video. So I loaded it up.
Okay.
I had some problems with it. It's not quite as great as I remember it, but I'll show you a little bit. Like,
kind of
one of the things that I really like about the Play on Linux is awesome good old game support. So if I go install here and I go over here to these here games category map.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
Okay.
See, look at if I scroll down on this list, watch. See, look at this, and starting at the G's here.
Oh, nice, and it's already marked.
Look at all those GOG.coms. Look at all.
So it's just one-stop shopping.
Look at all of those. Look at all of them. There's so many.
Wow.
There's so many of them. So I did a couple. I own a few good old games. Like here's Descent 3. Let's give it a go. Let's see what happens. So you can also install. Whoa. I guess I still have the audio on.
Hello.
You can also install productivity applications. I tried just install the CS4 demo. It wouldn't work. But here, let's see if. Oh man, going full screen.
Whoa. Yeah. So this is some of the brokenage.
Yeah, they're not even seeing it in the video.
Yeah. So what we're seeing is like some discombobulated thing.
Yeah, they get nothing. They get nothing because it did a mode change on them. But
it's doing funky stuff now.
Yeah. So as you can kind of see, I kind of broke my desktop. It's kind of hitting.
Probably have to reboot now. But
yeah.
Restart something.
I won't be able to read the other.
Yeah, you get the it basically zoomed in. It's like the zoom feature.
Yeah, yeah.
Like
I'll have to go kill it. But so yeah, Play on Linux is a good way to get some apps. But I don't want to be the guy that makes it. That's funny. It's still playing in the background. I don't want to be the guy that says this, but I kind of think that maybe
a little more time in the oven. Or do we blame Wine? Do we blame a Play on Linux? Do we blame the implementation or the cooperation between the two components? It's kind of hard to say.
I think it's just a symptom of of where it's at. Yeah. They're also they are working on a Mac version now.
Interesting.
And I don't know if that's maybe getting more attention.
I'm kind of wondering. It's kind of like we still got some bugs to deal with here. Hey, let's do a whole new thing. It's like
know those Mac users. They've already got crossover. Yeah. All right. So did I get X back? Nope.
Awesome.
So this is why we need Wayland. This is why we need Wayland. Because
there it is. Right?
It's funny. Gnome's actually still pretty.
Yeah, it still works. It's just got a zoom going on.
Yeah, I wonder. I wonder.
Is it I almost wonder it's doing a resolution thing.
Well, luckily, my Arch system reboots in about 7 seconds. So
beat that with a stick. There it is.
You can't really complain too much.
Scoring for Arch.
All right, Matt. Well, so you can go check out Play on Linux if you like, but be advised that there may be glitches. As a good old games enthusiast, I've got a handful of good old games. The fact that I can just download them, load up Play on Linux or whatever it's called, And
it seems like the hiccup is when anytime you're going to go full screen with any game, it can be a little hit and miss. Yeah.
That's X, right? That's what this whole episode's really kind of been about. Is we are at a point now where X is sort of holding us back as a desktop,
and we just experienced it.
Yeah, yeah.
So
we just did. So,
point
anyways,
one to Wayland, point one to Mir, whatever. But guys, come on, get on it.
The system's back, and we're back up and going. Last email of the day. Just wanted to point out, this came from James McRae. We covered this a couple of weeks. I incorrectly stated that you could develop for the Oculus Rift, that new cool 3D.
Right.
I said you could develop for on Linux. I corrected myself, but I mentioned that. That actually is true now. The SDK now officially supports Linux. People who are developing 3D virtual reality games will now be able to do so on Ubuntu 12.04.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's really awesome.
Very cool. All right, Matt. Well, where should people find you throughout the week?
As always, datamation.com. Scroll down to open source and clicky.
Holy cow. Are you
I
kidding
actually
me?
did a Fedora thing.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, a little, just kind of a where it's at, what's going on.
Oh,
so.
look at you getting the clicks. Good
Fedora,
for you, Matt. Good for you.
Little link bait going on there, but yeah.
Very timely, too. Fedora versus Ubuntu.
And it was just, it wasn't so much a hard comparison. It's more or less just which is better for the new user? Or can you actually go that direction? Just a little touch and go here.
Good things to consider.
Soft gloved.
I want to give a special mention to two of my other children. Lass, of course, my firstborn. But both Coder Radio and TechSnap just wrapped up some great episodes this last week. If you're jonesing for a long commute episode, go check out TechSnap 116, I think it was last week's.
Oh, cool.
An hour and 50-minute long show.
Whoa!
We had a huge batch of awesome feedback questions that everything from network file servers to VPNs and LAN implementations and all kinds of great stuff.
A real learning episode.
Very good stuff. Yeah, Al and I were joking that if we were charged our hourly consulting rate for that episode, that'd be a several $100 episode.
Wow.
So Coder Radio is going to be great too, and we'd love to have you join us live for Coder Radio on Monday. So catch the show, and then you listen to Linux Action Show on your drive into work, and then when you get into work at 9 a.m. noon Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific, noon Eastern over at jblive.tv, you can tune into Coder Radio. So you wrap up with Lass, sit down at the desk, tune into Coder Radio.
It's like a nice flow.
It is, man. Yeah, it is. Cool. All right, everyone. Well, thanks so much for tuning in this week's episode of the Linux Action Show. We'll see you right back here next week. My screen's
awesome.
cracked. Yeah, my helmet's cracked. Yeah, as I get more damage, there's more cracks.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so this is my little compass. Tell me where to go. Just a little side scroller, a couple of bucks on Steam. Totally kid safe because he loves that I'm shooting bugs. See, that's just the greatest thing ever for him.
Right.
That's what they do. I spying. That's how they do. I spying. Ba 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 ba. I've never been happier with an installation. I run into issues, but like that VirtualBox problem I had where I got all upset, that the fix that I did to fix that has now lasted through 2 kernel updates.
Nice. Okay.
It's funny that I've had 2 kernel updates since that problem.
Right.
I've even switched to a different branch of the kernel without issue. And
That's cool.
It has so far, it has held that when I fix something in Arch, it stays fixed. Back in my day, you did a podcast, it was audio only, and people were glad if they could download it.
You were butt naked doing it, no one knew.